Hello you guys, it's the VC Andrews Critiquer. I've decided to take a little break from doing old versus news and share some of my thoughts on the new Animaniacs reboot. No, it wasn't quite what I thought it would be. I was hoping they would feature more of the original characters besides the Warners and Pinky and the Brain. I mean, outside of an 8-second non-speaking cameo. And I also missed the more explicit, "Good night everybody" moments.
Just came by to introduce myself and show you my buns. Good night, everybody.
Oh, that sounds so much more risque than,
I found prints! No, fingerprints. I don't think so.
But then again, it's 2020 and censorship is a bit stricter now than it was in the 90s, and honestly I'm glad they stopped objectifying women with the "hello nurse" bits. But other than that, the reboot seems to really respect the personalities of the original characters. I mean, sure, you can still feel the lack of input from Tom Ruegger or Paul Rugg, but it's clear the new minds behind the reboot have a pretty good understanding of the original characters and how to update them for modern times. There was just one episode that I felt was a huge betrayal to the original series, and that was the Halloween special, Fear and Laughter in Burbank. Actually, let me make something clear. It's not the premise itself that's bad. I am actually totally on board for an Animaniacs parody of it. But what's wrong with this episode is how the Warners react towards Pennywise, or rather Nickelwise. What do I mean? Well, in the original series, a running joke was that the Warners weren't afraid of traditionally scary things like Dracula or the Grim Reaper. Hell, they've gone up against Lucifer, no pun intended, and his mighty wrath and horror without even batting an eye. That's a big part of what made them so awesome and funny. But the thing is, they had fears just like everyone else. They just weren't rational kinds of fears. They were scared of bad comedy, they were scared of boring people, they were scared of Baloney the dinosaur. That's why Satan eventually decided to torture them with whiny protest songs from the 60s, because he knew that was something that would scare them. Or when King Salazar sent them to the cave of your worst nightmares in Wacko's Wish, it succeeded in breaking them because it was tailored specifically to their fears. Because of this, the Warners showed that they were still vulnerable and thus relatable, so in principle, Pennywise should be a worthy foe for the Warners because he takes the forms of one's personal greatest fear. So it feels like a major jump the shark moment when the Warners react to Pennywise, I mean Nickelwise, the same way they react to traditionally scary monsters or enemies. Well, for the most part, but we'll get to that later. Remember how scared of clowns Wacko was in the original series? Well, now that he's going against probably the scariest clown in existence, what does he have to say?
But this guy's a cutie.
I mean, sure, you can make the argument that Wacko's only scared of unintentionally scary clowns, not a demonic one like Nickelwise. But then Nickelwise starts taking the form of each Warner's personal greatest fear. He shows Dot not being cute when she gets older, and Wacko a big buffet of yummy food that he can't eat because it's all plastic. So when Wacko and Dot aren't fazed at all, this shows a complete lack of regard for their traits in the original series that made them both unique and relatable. Dot's cuteness is supposed to be what she treasures more than anything else. She loves it like her own child and will gloat about it any chance she gets. So there is no way she would have been able to stand an elderly, ugly version of her future self, let alone admire it. And no, Wacko is way too much of a glutton to be able to live with eating plastic food. In the original series, he'd be begging Nickelwise for real food. Thankfully though, Yakko's encounter with Nickelwise is done correctly. We learn that Yakko's personal greatest fear is people not thinking he's funny. So when Nickelwise uses that against him, he finds he can't stand up to him on his own and only avoids having his soul taken because Wacko and Dot show up just in time to help him overcome that fear. This is how it should have been done for all three of them. They should have stayed together and helped one another overcome their fears, just like the main characters did in the original It movie, and then find the courage to turn the tables on him. But unfortunately, the reboot seems to think that Pennywise is just another average scary guy that the Warners are supposed to be immune to, and he's not. He's someone that no one can stand up to by themselves because he knows their biggest fears and preys upon them. So having the Warners react like this to him not only goes against who Pennywise is, but also against who the Warners are. Like said before, the reboot really does have a pretty good understanding of the original series overall, but this episode shows that Ruegger really should give some input for Season 2.